Alright, we're back downstairs. So now we're about maybe a quarter of the way done. And we're getting to the part that to me is the most difficult part. Sure, we made these other cuts and made it so the Picatinny rails line up and everything. But the most difficult part, in my opinion, is that you can see on the front part here, there's going to be the rails and all that. That'll look great. But on the back part of the foregrip, we still have this, which is a problem because that just doesn't look very nice and seamless, and it doesn't look like it belongs, and we aren't going to have rails on the back, so we have to try to grind that whole part off on the front and on the back so that it looks like pretty much like this. So we got to go from this part and try to grind it and sand it down so it just looks like one seamless, continuous, smooth side of the foregrip, which is difficult, and pretty much you can use a Dremel for that. But if it's not perfect, don't worry, and if you accidentally end up cutting a little bit more out, don't worry about that. I'm going to get the Dremel and try to do that in a second. So what I did is I put this grinding blade on the Dremel. I'm not going to be cutting through the foregrip, obviously, I don't want to do that, but I'm going to use the rough top part here to try to go at an angle and grind off this little extra rise here that we aren't going to need anymore on the foregrip. And if you end up accidentally cutting in a little bit too far, don't worry. You'll see in a little bit why that won't be a problem. But be very careful here and watch your fingers and try not to rush through this. You want to do a good job on it. So you're going to be cutting just like that. Take your time, go nice and slow. And just as an example, you can see how the edge there is taking on more of a rounded shape as opposed to the hard edge right there. So that's what you're pretty much going for, and try to do that all the way down. Okay, I am done with the first part on this one side. As you can see, it's a lot shinier because the finish of the plastic doesn't match anymore, and we're going to fix that later. But as you can see from looking down the side, you can't see that hard-edged lip that you could before. So to the touch, this is pretty smooth, and once we put on some compound that's going to go over all of the inconsistencies in the plastic from our cuts, and then we sand it and paint it all, this isn't really going to be able to be noticeable. You won't really see it. So that took about 10 minutes worth of just going really slow with the Dremel on this, and we're going to do the same thing to the other half. Alright, the two back parts of the extended foregrip are now sanded and ground down. There isn't that rough edge anymore, as you can see. It's pretty rounded, and it's a little rough right now, but we're going to go over that and make it nice and smooth. But as you can see, it will make a big difference. Okay, as you can see right now, we have the front half of the foregrip that's already cut and ready to go. The back part's been sanded, and that edge is pretty smooth now. We're gonna polish it up in a little bit, but it'll work for the purposes. Next thing you're gonna do is separate the two halves and roughly position them side by side, making sure that the seams pretty much line up on the top and on the bottom. Nice place to gauge it is right there. You can move it up or down. I'm going to try to keep it as even as possible. Most important seam is that the top stays the same, not down a little bit, or the two halves won't clip together. This one's the most important. And you can see how it doesn't look rounded right here. This gap, we'll fix that up in a little bit. Now we're going to take our 2-part epoxy right here, or plastic weld, and I'm going to shoot everything left right there into this little disposable Dixie cup. And take a Q-tip, preferably unused, and mix the two of them up together. Now with the 2 parts of the epoxy and the hardener mixed together, we're going to take it on the Q-tip and just gently put it right, a nice little bead right along the seams on both sides of the foregrip, and sandwich it together. If it bleeds out a little bit and there's a little bit of goop, don't worry, we're going to take that down. And so you don't have to put a really thick bead of the epoxy on. If it bleeds off, that'll be okay, because this stuff has about a 2,000 pound per square inch rating, so you don't need a whole lot for it to be effective. And it's going to gush out a little bit when you squeeze the 2 halves together. Don't worry, you're going to take the Dremel and sand it after that. Now, making sure that you line the 2 halves up, all the points, just give it a nice squeeze and try to make sure that the seam along the top Picatinny rail is lined up nicely. And that's the first part. Repeat it on the second one and give them about 20 minutes to dry.